everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Fire Chief Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the Chief Medical Officer. I'm your host, Lee Scheinbart, and this podcast generally brings you stories and wisdom from some of the best physician leaders in healthcare today. Chief Medical Officers, the CMOs that we will feature on this show, face some of the toughest challenges in healthcare today, and they will share with you their insights about the role and the responsibilities that come with that title. This is all particularly relevant today. I'm broadcasting from my office as I do not have access to the recording studio used for taping the show on account of the impending storm where I live, and I've had to cancel several CMO interviews planned for this week on account of Hurricane Milton. With the state of Florida about to bear the brunt of another major hurricane just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene slammed into the Panhandle and destroyed communities all the way into western North Carolina, naturally, many of us are modifying our normal operations. I've been in contact with a few of my colleagues around the state offering my support, and it was suggested that I give a quick overview of things to think about and what to do as a CMO, especially if this is your first major hurricane in that role. Even if you're a veteran, there may be something new to learn here as well. And in fact, the tips that I will share in a moment can easily apply to just about any natural or man-made disaster, such as in a major flood, a major deep freeze, forest fire, or a massive power outage. But we will deal with all of those things in due time. For now, believe me when I say that these tips are battle tested. These are tips that I personally learned from a solid military leader, one who has devoted the better part of the last decade to physician leadership. From an article that retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling wrote in 2020 in the Journal of Hospital Medicine entitled 10 Tips for a Crisis, Lessons from a Soldier, and I'll post a link to the article in the comments and captions later. I've adapted his tips specifically to the role of the CMO. Tip number 1, find a battle buddy. As a CMO, you have a variety of choices to go into battle with, especially in a crisis or a disaster. In certain cases, it may be your CNO, or your COO, or your emergency management director, or even your CEO. But your number one battle buddy ought to be your chief of staff, otherwise also called the medical staff president. And if you have more than one facility under your purview, then set up a chief's council or a medical staff president's council and work with all of them collectively. There is no one more important to the management of the medical staff than the chief of staff or the medical staff president. Number 2, involve everyone. Work through the medical staff with your chief or your president all the way down to the department chairs and include the service line leaders as well as medical directors. Have them share the information that the med staff need to hear about your event, about your impending storm or flood. Word to the wise, do not ever forget how your contracted physicians are organized. The department chair of medicine if you contract for hospitalists, or the chair of emergency department if you outsource your emergency physicians, may not actually be the person who has authority over how those contracted physicians serve during a disaster. Make sure to include the formal department chair leaders as well as those that have more influence over how the entire contracted group works. Number 3, expect the unexpected. While our training prepares us for this type of thing, drop in level of consciousness, jump in the heart rate, uncontrolled bleeding, you can apply those skills that you have into disaster management as well. But you have to be creative and use your imagination both for potential scenarios you didn't expect as well as for possible solutions. What would you do, for example, if the doors of your facility are somehow not airtight and at the same time you're having electrical issues with your HVAC and your chillers, and someone notifies the command center that the humidity is rising in the OR, which is a no-no, of course, and someone is brought in by personal vehicle after suffering some kind of major trauma from a structural collapse. Your helicopter isn't flying and the rigs are all shut down. You cannot transfer the patient and your OR is questionable. Someone is going to ask you your clinical thinking about what to do. Be creative, use your imagination, and take care of that patient. Number 4, fatigue is always a factor. Arrange for relief way in advance. And for those who haven't had time to be relieved from Hurricane Helene, Milton is going to be a major energy drain. Arrange for breaks, naps even. If you are evacuating patients out of your facilities right now, who will be ready to receive them back when the waters recede and you can take patients again? Who will be ready and rested for that? And always remember what you learned in residency. Eat when you can, sleep when you can, and use the can when you can. Number 5, huddle early and often. Be in the mindset of the quarterback on the football team. Be ready to huddle a lot and move the ball down the field inch by inch, yard by yard. Huddle early, midday, late. And I don't mean with the executive peer group in the command center. I mean huddle up with your medical staff leaders. Do not forget about the medical staff that are in the facility with you. If need be, invite the chief of staff, the medical staff president, to your executive command center huddle. Let them see how the sausage is made from that perspective, and they can help you share that information back to the medical staff. Recall tip number 2, involve everyone. Okay, we're halfway home. Number 6, act without delay. Set the cadence for action. If your physicians that stay with you at the hospital during the restricted access phase of your storm or what other disaster you're facing, and they are not the ones posted on your call roster, create a new roster immediately and put everyone's cell phones on it and distribute it not just to the wards and to the emergency department, but to all the other doctors that are staying with you so they know how to talk to each other. And make sure you put it on paper and on whiteboards and anything else that's analog. If you lose technical or power capabilities, you will be very glad you went old school. Post your huddle times on paper, staff meeting times, find extra call rooms, put names next to rooms. If you have time and you need to, go out to Walmart or Costco and buy up some mattresses, especially the kind that fold up and unfold, whether they're air or foam. You never have enough mattresses when people are spending long hours with you inside of a lockdown facility. And if you can, get some of those portable phone chargers. Those are great, especially if you're on limited power or backup power. Act now. Okay, number 7, adapt. What you can do or not do remotely with telemedicine may be something that comes into play. If, for example, you rely on telemedicine for ICU coverage, what happens if your telecommunications fails you in some way? Do you have ICU physicians available? Are they staying with you? What about your anesthesiologists or your trauma physicians who have an extra year of critical care under their belt? They did that extra year of training. Can they support you during a problem with communications in the ICU? What about your emergency management director? Have you sat down with him or her and learned where the stash of satellite phones are? How do you use them? How many are you able to distribute to your people? How would those help or not help during a real logistical issue, especially regarding patient safety and medical staff readiness? Okay, number 8. We're at number 8. The general said, stop talking and start fighting. But I would say we should stop talking and start walking. Go make rounds on every floor. Wear your scrubs and or your white coat. Get rid of the coat and tie for this. Say hello to everyone. Check in with everyone. Get a cart, fill it up with snacks, candy, spare swag that's left over from marketing in the closet, especially blankets. The staff really love an extra blanket. And pass those things out on all the floors and take lots of pictures. Post them later. Everyone will be appreciative of that. And most importantly, even as chief medical officer, talk to security, talk to facilities, and to housekeeping. These are the unsung heroes of every disaster. They are there with you and doing the things that no one is thinking about or talking about. Number 9, take care of the team. Remember number 1 and number 2, the buddy and involving everyone on the medical staff. Take care of the team. Put your medical staff leaders in a conference room and turn your ordinary huddle into a meal. Ask the kitchen folks to try to whip up something special for everyone in the room, something that they haven't planned to use. Ask them for that favor. You'll pay that favor back another time. And then have the CEO, if he's not present or she, call in, thanking the physicians for staying inside the hospital, or better yet, have a board member call in and do the exact same thing. Number 10, the big one, be ready to lead. Infuse oxygen into hope and bring calm into chaos. Do not whine at least not until much, much later. Your leadership in a crisis is an absolute golden opportunity to gain invaluable and irreplaceable street cred with the medical staff. You know they think you went to the dark side. And while you may not move the needle too much on that thinking, you can show them a lot of respect and gratitude and earn their trust in return. The best thing that a CMO can earn is trust. Well, those are the top 10 tips for a CMO in a crisis. And that about wraps up the show for today. Mark Hertling later wrote another piece for how to draw down from a crisis, but any tips on that will have to wait until this storm passes. You've been listening to the Fire Chief Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the CMO. Stay tuned for coming episodes. You can watch the episode on YouTube, and you can also check out the website. Both links will be posted in the comments and caption section. And in the famous words of Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, let's be careful out there.